So success is God's calling over good ideas and pursuing relationship over relevance. So Craig covered God's calling over good ideas last week, but I'd like to just go over that with you. So I've put up these questions. What is your context and how does this shape the way you look at the topic of calling and purpose? How do you define a successful person? Have you heard stories of people giving up something for God and getting something better? And how does this make you feel? How does the idea of you not seeing the fruits of your own labor in your lifetime, and how does that make you feel? So I'm going to randomly pick on somebody. Craig. So we'll look at the first one.
This is shocking, Gina.
So Craig, what is your context, and how does this actually affect or shape the way you look at the topic of calling and purpose?
And so when you look at what's our calling, what's my calling, what's my purpose, my context is where I am right now, where I find myself, where I live, what I do. That's my context. So it's not complicated. So the question to all of us is, where are you right now in your life? And how does that affect? It's not where you want to be or where you've been. It's right now. We find ourselves right here, right now.
And how do you define a successful person, or a business, or a church even?
And this is where it starts to get a little bit more complex, because if we said, what is a successful church? There's a whole lot of measures. What's a successful business? There's a whole lot of measures. But if you come back to what's a successful person, where do you land in all of those things? And for me, it's, am I simply doing what I need to be doing today? And just simply stepping in it and not allowing the world to determine what success is, or how many followers I've got on Facebook, or how many this, or how much is my bank balance, and all those various things. There's multiple things like that around us, but what defines who I am is who I am, the context I'm in and what I do, not what I'm doing and how successful I am in all of your eyes.
Okay. So have you ever heard of a story of somebody giving up something for God and then getting something better? And how does this make you feel?
Okay. Honesty, I hear this. I think, why them and not me? They gave that up, and they gave away this car and they got a better car. They gave away this amount of money and they got that amount of money. And so I do the same, and then I end up with no car. Or no money. You know, so we trade off. We try to enter, the trading zone with God, and we enter the stock exchange and we try and exchange. God's not in the exchange business. So we don't give so we can get. And so for me, and if I'm honest with you, when I hear about that, I'm thinking, that wasn't really right. And if you know how bad that person actually is, and they've got so much more than me, that's the honesty part of it.
And how does the idea of you not seeing the fruits of your own labor in your own lifetime, and how does that make you feel?
Again, my real answer is, I'm fine with that. I'm just trusting God, and it's all okay if I never see the fruit of all the work that I'm doing. Not. We want to see results. We want to measure it, we want to see it, because that takes us back to our context, takes us back to why we're successful, and we can measure all that stuff. If you study the Word of God, and if you look at Jesus' life, when he died, there was no visible fruit, but God. So the real answer is, it doesn't matter as long as I'm faithful to step it out. But in reality, unbelievably difficult that, because we want to see results.
But can I say, you're the one person that embodies this ability to be disappointed but not become bitter because of that, and then just moving on. Because it's part of that, not seeing the fruit. sometimes seeing disappointment, not even not seeing fruit, experiencing disappointment, and not allowing that to make you better, but move on and just allow God to take you to the next.
Thanks, John. That's true. A good example you are. And we're all meant to be good examples. Sit down, Craig. Okay.
Now you guys see how it works in my house.
Okay, you may have a seat. Oops. Oops. All right, let's just go one at a time. Okay. So today I'm going to talk about success being pursuing relationships over relevance. So what is a relationship really? I mean, what is the most incredible relationship that we know of, that we can have? It's friendship. You know, friendship is the basis of everything, even in our marriages. If we're not friends with the person we married to, it's going to be really hard. And friendship is such an amazing place to be able to share your heart and your soul. If you have Christian friends, they're incredible. They build you up. So relationships as in friendships. But should we be pursuing relationships over relevance? So what is relevance? I mean, relevance is an important word, but it's quite difficult to actually define. But it means, in some ways, important and to matter. So if you are relevant, you are important and you matter. The desire for relevance, as I said, to be important and to matter, is also proving my usefulness to a world that demands it. I have to justify my existence through some or other successful endeavor. And isn't that how we all are? This comes naturally to us. Most of us want this, to be important and to matter. And as many of you know, Craig had put it on Facebook, that, not me, that I recently retired from, I say resigned because I'm not that old, I took early retirement. But anyway, I retired for a job that I'd been doing for 30 years and even longer. So it's actually quite daunting. I mean, I'm a medical doctor, and there's a certain status that comes with that, being a doctor. When I go to court, there are people that know me. If I walk down the corridors, I have policemen and I have prosecutors, I have lawyers saying, hi doc, and telling me like sometimes the outcomes of cases that we've done together and like asking me questions. They greet me. And then if I testify in court, I get thanked for my valuable time. So you really feel good. And it's a job that I've enjoyed sometimes, but I think it's very relevant, and I think it's very important because I help to put people in jail that have committed crimes, violent crimes. And I help to solve mysteries. So I think I'm quite relevant. But sure, something inside of me was telling me it was just too much. My success was putting my own soul at risk. I didn't have time for friends. I didn't have time for God, for prayer, and for just being quiet and just having time. I mean, it's such a busy life. When you have everything that you have to do, studying, lecturing, going to court, cutting up bodies, that is like, it was hectic. And I just really felt that my soul was at risk and I needed to change something in this. I'd like to tell you the story about an American actor, Carrie Fisher. Does anybody know her? Oh, don't put up your hands, you're really old. But for the young ones who've never heard of her, yes, She's from Star Wars. Yes. So she shot to stardom playing Princess Leia in the original Star Wars. Later in her life, she came to realize that celebrity is just obscurity biding its time. She recognized that however hard you might try to maintain relevancy and influence, at some point down the line, cultures will shift, wrinkles will appear, and others will shoot to stardom. They will get the jobs you want, and the public will move on, and you'll be forgotten. And this will happen to all of us as well. You know, we were just talking the other day, and we were saying, who of you can actually remember your great-grandparents' names? Just their names. I mean, that's not so far ago, so long ago, so far off. I mean, you remember your grandparents' names, but do you actually remember your great-grandparents? That's like 2-3 generations away. And they thought they were so significant then, didn't they? They were there. But do we even remember them? Let me just put my glasses on. So, as true as this lack of relevance for me will eventually become obscurity, by focusing on external relevance over relationships with each other, could we be putting the very soul of the church in danger? So I'll just repeat that. By focusing on external relevance, money, numbers, fame, could we be putting the soul of the church in danger? So this desire to be relevant is the desire to be seen. Let me change this. So the desire to be relevant is actually the desire to be seen, which can only truly be found in relationships, ironically, isn't it? I mean, if we are truly seen, the one relationship where we are truly, truly seen, as I said earlier, is in marriage. That's the one person that sees us, warts and all. And we are really relevant to that other person as they see us. I'd like to read or tell you the story of Hagar. In Genesis chapter 16, we look at the story of Hagar. So I'm just going to paraphrase the beginning part of it. Abram's wife Sarah had no children, and Sarai gave her Egyptian servant Hagar to be Abram's wife. She conceived and began to despise Sarai, her mistress. And this upset Sarai so much, she complained to Abram, who puts Hagar back into her hands. So I'm going to read from Genesis chapter 16, verse 6 onwards. Your servant is in your hands, Abram said. Do with her whatever you think best. And then Sarai mistreated Hagar, and so she fled from her. She ran away. And the angel of the Lord found Hagar near a spring in the desert. It is a spring that is beside the road to Shur. And he said, Hagar, servant of Sarai, where have you come from and where are you going? And she said, I'm running away from my mistress, Sarai. And then the angel of the Lord told her, go back to your mistress and submit to her. And then the angel added, I will so increase your descendants that they will be too numerous to count. And the angel of the Lord also said to her, you are now with child, and you will have a son. You shall name him Ishmael, for the Lord has heard of your misery. And the word Ishmael means God hears. I'll skip the next verse. And then she gave this name to the Lord. who spoke to her, "You are the God who sees me." For, she said, "I have now seen the one who sees me." And that is why the well was called, so the well that was next to the road was called Beer Lahai Roy, or El Roy. Beer Lahai Roy means well of the living one who sees me. And I just think it's an incredible story for Hagar. I have had a very soft spot for her. I just think she's had a really raw deal. She's a slave, which can't be great. She gets forced to sleep with her master. She then falls pregnant, and then she does become very relevant, doesn't she? She becomes very important and relevant in her own eyes, and she hopes in the rest. She starts lording it over her mistress, who then mistreats her, and to such a point that she runs away. And you know what? That's where God sees her, in her brokenness. God hasn't forgotten her. He's never left her. He hears her and he sees her. And she calls God El Roy, the one who sees me. Sorry, let me just go on to the next slide. So there are 3 keys to following Jesus successfully, because I think we all know what success is in the world. It's something that we all strive toward, okay, even though we shouldn't, okay? So one of the first things is from relevance to obscurity, or to embracing obscurity. If I read from 1 Chronicles 29, verse 15, and I love these verses. I just think they are so profound. "We are here for only a moment, visitors and strangers in the land as our ancestors were before us. Our days on earth are like a passing shadow, gone so soon without a trace." And Psalm 103, verse 15 and 16. "As for man, his days are like grass. He blooms like a flower of the field. And when the wind passes over it, it vanishes, and its place is no longer known." I mean, isn't that obscure? Isn't that obscurity? We pass away. Nobody will remember. And we want to be somebody, yet we serve a God who had everything and yet chose to be nothing. Jesus' whole ministry was counterintuitive. He came as a king. His disciples thought he would be the king that they were waiting for, that he would conquer the Romans and that he would lord it over everybody. But this isn't how it was, is it? Has anybody got their Bible here that would like to read Philippians 2, verse 6 to 8? This is the God we claim to serve.
Jesus Christ, who, existing in the form of God, did not consider equality with God as something to be exploited. Instead, he emptied himself by assuming the form of a servant, taking on the likeness of humanity. And when he had come as a man, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to the point of death, even death on a cross.
So yes, if any of us dares to follow our suffering servant king, we must learn both to trust him and to travel in his footsteps. Really hard. What does Jesus say? In Luke 9, verse 48, he told them, Whoever welcomes this little child in my name welcomes me, and whoever welcomes me welcomes he who sent me. For whoever is least among you, this one is great. So if you are truly in love with Jesus, his is the only opinion that really matters. So just looking at those three in the front, from relevance, popularity, and leading, I mean, that's how we'd all like to be. We'd all like to be relevant, we'd all like to be popular, and we'd all like to lead. Stardom and heroism is not alien to the church. So even though we claim to follow Jesus, we very often don't. Churches are often judged on how many people there are, how fantastic the worship is, how many lights and strobes. It's become a show that we need to be better and better, and we stress out so that we can compete with famous other churches. It's about money. We have to keep on paying all the bills, and we have to keep on putting better and better trappings on a church. But as Christians, we are actually called to minister to the needy and broken. We also need to remember that we are not the healers. We are not the reconcilers. We are not the givers of life. We are also sinful, broken, vulnerable people who need as much care as anyone we care for. So do we focus on external relevance over relationships? I think we often do. With each other and with the Lord. So if mission is not connected to discipleship within community, most of the efforts go nowhere. So we've all seen evangelists coming out, telling people about God and disappearing. They don't disciple, and they're not in the same communities that they come to. Often churches bus people out of their community and into a fancy church that they don't really feel like they belong. And this impoverishes the community that they come from. We should be building churches in the communities where the people are. And as I said, ask that first question to Craig, what is your context? We need to be in our context, in our communities, serving. And from leading to being led, all of us want to lead. We all want to be the leader, okay? So, but not so much as being in charge of a team, because that's a lot of work. But we actually want to just do what we want to do. We want to pursue our own vision. We don't want others to tell us what to do. We want to be in charge of our own lives. But leading like Jesus looks entirely different from what we imagine. He takes us to places we would rather not go. From a leadership built on power to a leadership in which we critically discern where God is leading us and our people. So often we say, no, Lord, send me, Lord, to the islands, but not to the poor and the impoverished. But that is what Jesus wants us to do. We should look for opportunities to give away power and to serve. Jesus was a servant king. That was his leadership style. Basically, we need to draw nearer to Jesus in friendship. We are seen by Jesus. And when Jesus sees us, it helps us to see others. And seeing others, really seeing them, leads to friendship. But friendship brings both joy and pain. And as you were saying, John, like betrayal is really hard. If we don't see the fruits, and not only just not seeing the fruits, but actually betraying people or being betrayed. And I read an interesting thing which says, when we betray somebody, you're actually betraying yourself. You're betraying your own values, what you say you believe. You sometimes in betrayal in marriage relationships, you're betraying yourself. You're destroying your own life. You're destroying your own family, even when you're betraying somebody else. And when we betray Jesus, how do you think he feels about that? You know, we betray Jesus regularly, but we're so ready to take offense when we're betrayed. But friendship also brings us joy. God wouldn't require all these things of us if it wasn't to our benefit. He always has our benefit in mind. And deep friendship with God through prayer, reading, and also deep friendships with other people are actually the joy in life. Those are actually the joy in life. All these emotions that all this causes us to draw back to Jesus. When things don't go right, when relationships fail, when we feel betrayed, when we feel that we have betrayed somebody, that's worse. That's worse than being betrayed. And this causes us to draw back to Jesus. And in our relationship with Jesus, we can ask him to help us to reach these points. So in conclusion, I'd like to say that in our deepest relationships, we find the relevance that matters and that feeds our souls. 1 John 4 verse 19 says, "We love because he first loved us." So 1 John 4 verse 19, we love because he first loved us. El Roy, the God that sees us.